Welcome to EdUp Curriculum. I am your host, Nicole Poff, and I know I always say I'm really excited about every guest we have, but I really am excited about today's guest because we're going to be talking about some topics that I think, A, we don't talk about enough, but B, are just fun to kind of talk about and explore. So without further ado, today's guest is Dr. Joshua Fischer. Joshua, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to jump in, but before we do, can you introduce yourself? What do you want the people listening to know about you and your background and what you do?
Well, I'm glad to be here. The reason I wanted to come on the show and really talk to you is the ideas of curriculum that we work on day to day are so important. And I've been saying this as you have for years about how important it is to really professionally design curriculum and make sure that people understand that you can't just jump into it without knowing what to do, or you make mistakes that are just terrible at times. And so I always like to have the conversation and let people know about the importance of professionally designed, instructionally designed curriculum. And you've certainly been a leader in that, and just wanted to share that conversation with you.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think we'll definitely get into that. One of the kind of themes when you and I talked, right? We were talking about there's so many different things to talk about. What should we talk about? This idea kind of kept coming up that higher ed is at a crossroads, right? This became very constant with what you and I were just chatting about. What do you think brought us to this crossroads? And more than that, what should we be pay attention to as we get to these crossroads?
Well, we've been having the conversation most of my professional career about the return on the investment for higher ed. And, I kept seeing that conversation, the importance of that conversation go up and go up, go up. But frankly, I think we're at the time now where people are going, maybe it's not worth it to go for me. And maybe I need to think of something different, more so than I've heard any time in my career. And I look at that and I go, there's definitely some people that don't need to spend that time. They could go into the marketplace and have that trade background. They could start a business, buy a business. They could develop themselves and their career patterns in many different ways. Uh, the amount of information available to people today is so much greater than it ever was. I mean, I'm from a time when we didn't have the internet, and we were in paper card catalogs doing our research, quote unquote, our review of literature. And so when you look back to that, to what we have today and the access to information, it's so much greater that people might go, yeah, it makes sense for me to go a different route. I look at my kids. My youngest is 21. When he wants to understand something, his method is not let me go read a book on it. No, it's let me do a search on Google or in YouTube or a dozen other places where he can kind of get a video lecture, video understanding of what's going on. That's not a perfect scenario. There's always obviously inaccurate information, but that's the way that he learns it. He uses very pedagogical style where he's just going to pick up where he feels important and go after that information and search it down. And so you have those types of people looking at it and going, I think I have a better way to do that. And so we in the education sector who are in higher ed and K-12, we need to be thinking for our students, okay, how do I make this a better product for them? And how do I help them get to where they're supposed to go professionally? And I think that's kind of what drives the conversation of, do we need to change? Should we change? How do we change? All those things, and really pushes that envelope to make sure that we're having that conversation. All those different ways that they can train themselves.
Absolutely. And I feel like we've been having this, like you said, we've been having this conversation for a really long time. As literally back to when I first entered the industry. We've been having this conversation. It does feel different now, and I think you hit the nail on the head, is that the access that students have
Yeah.
available, like you can go on Instagram, right? And you can buy someone's course for
Yeah.
$30 and they promise you that you can make $100,000 a year, right? Being an influencer or creating a class. Um, and that's what's popping up in their news feed. And that's what we're competing with. And we're like, don't spend $30 on a course and instead spend $60,000 on a degree that's going to take you 4 years, not 4 weeks. It feels, how do you compete with that? I mean, honestly, how do you compete with that?
Well, I think part of it is you've got to make the conscious decision as the consumer of the information of what is it that I'm looking for. I tell my kids, or have told them throughout their lives, like what I do, I could have learned it. I could be doing it without the degree. Certainly, the degree gives me the theoretical basis. It gives me the research tools, that sort of thing. But I could have learned practically how to do it. The big difference was the credential opened the doors. And so if the credential is not there, then you have to ask the question, what doors are going to be closed to me? And if some of those are areas you want to walk through, you can't do it without the credential. I'm not going to be a doctor working on someone medically without that degree and passing the boards and all that stuff. So that's a vitally important aspect of when you're thinking about that from your perspective of where I want to go with my career is what is it that the curriculum really provides you? Does it provide the credential to open the doors? And so in the higher ed sector, we have to look at it and go, does this field need it for them? And be very honest with us, especially if we're evaluating our programs to be field ready. And so when you look at a student that is going through a business program, does what we have in our degree programs really prepare them to be the best in their field? Does it open the doors that they need to open? Sometimes it's not going to. And there's obviously the compliance side of things that a state or an accreditor is going to require specific things, and you have to live with that as the institution. And that part of it is an important aspect. But then when it comes right down to it for the student, they might not want to take world history,
Yeah,
but the state requires it, the accreditor requires it, or some sort of a history, humanities type of course. And those are pieces that lead to the doorway that they want to walk through. And that's a piece that we're going to have to show the students, hey, this is why it's important. It provides you this basic understanding, this broad understanding of the liberal arts degree, that sort of thing, and really understand how to sell that to them, help them walk
absolutely.
through the door.
And I'm glad you talked about business, because that's always I feel like everyone has a business degree offering, right? They have a marketing degree that's available. My issue, I'm going to get a little judgy here. My issue is that we rely on textbooks to inform the curriculum design, right? And some of these textbooks are really old. We rely on the faculty, and some of these full-time tenured faculty have not been in the field for 10, 20 plus years. And then you have this third component of business is changing so fast. I mean, you can't even keep up with it if you're revising your course. So, and this is a loaded question, how do we start to keep up with that? How do we adapt our curriculum to keep up with, let's say, marketing, which is forever changing and expanding?
Well, certainly that, and I've had this argument. This is one of the reasons I like adjuncts so much better. Nothing against full timers, they've dedicated their lives to teaching, but I like an adjunct who is got his or her foot in the real world, quote unquote, rather than just in academia, because they're doing the work out in the field. They're holding down a marketing job. They are working day to day in a business and then coming to teach at night or teaching online. And that part of it informs that. When I work with adjuncts, I say, look, we've got a design curriculum for you here. So you don't have to worry about picking the textbooks or doing any of that stuff. It's all set up. What I do want you to, though, is to tell the stories, tell the information that's going to make it real to the students and go, oh, yeah, I just did this yesterday. I just had this conversation. Or, because we didn't do this, our company is suffering. Or, this company is suffering. XYZ company is suffering because they didn't follow this practice that should be basic to every business operation system. And that part of it is an important aspect. From a very practical side of it, the um, the development process takes a while, unfortunately. Now, with AI tools and that sort of thing, we're getting that time reduced significantly. We're looking at, as we're designing now with AI tools, where we're seeing a 40% reduction in our time. And now we also put in there the human side of it, and we're reducing their hand touches on it. Like, we don't want them to do as much because they're the ones slowing down. They've got busy lives, etc., busy schedules, and so when we I'm going to confess here. This is a confessional, right?
Yep.
When my team gives me something, they hold their breath, like, okay, is this something he's going to go right through and get it done right away, or is it going to be one he gets started on and he sets it aside for another priority, and then 3 weeks later you ask him, did you work on that? And he goes, oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot. That's me. That's how I am. And so I typically take it out of my hands and put it in someone else's hands. But with faculty, because of their schedules, the less time that we can have them, dependent on their schedule, the better. So we get less time, in the process of a subject matter expert developing it, and so we take that time down, and the AI helps further take that down. But there's also the aspect of, okay, now that we've got the course designed, what do we put in there that can continually update without us redesigning it every week?
Yep.
And there are a ton of tools. I'm working with a group right now where you place the textbook in their system and it can automatically generate information based on what they're doing. They can query the textbook, they can query, a video that gets recorded, and it can customize up to, their preference. So let's say that I'm a learner and I go in there and I like to hear someone with an Aussie accent. I like to see it, I like to see a female speaking them, and I like to do stuff that is more kinesthetic, more hands-on. It starts learning that as you're going through the system, and I am very kinesthetic, so that's usually, I like things that I can touch or things that I can interact with a little bit more, hands-on. And so this system learns those things, and it learns, like, oh, I see that they process information better when it's in a bulleted format, or when it comes in a short spurt video versus a 30-minute video. It starts doing those things. And that's what the AI and machine learning, technologies that are available today start helping to keep that information up to date. Do we have it all figured out? Absolutely not. But we're getting there. We're getting there on that stuff.
Yeah, it's messy. I mean, I think right now there's with AI, right? There's this threat of, will it replace me as a
Sure.
faculty, right? Um, but I think you touched on something that's really vital, is that AI will never have that water cooler experience, right? They're not in the boardrooms, they're not in the meetings. Like, there are things that we can't replicate with AI, and there are things that we are. And right now it feels like we're just resisting all of it versus saying, AI can handle this piece. And really, faculty, your value to our students is these life moments, helping them figure out. My husband, he went to school. Actually, he went to University of Phoenix, and he went on ground, and he was an accounting major. And his faculty, he will forever say his faculty were so valuable because they would say, okay, let's take a time out from this material. I've seen this play out in the real world, and I've seen
Yeah.
someone get blackballed from the industry
Sure.
for doing this, right?
Absolutely.
Or you need to
Yep.
have really strong ethical, boundaries in accounting, and here's why. And my husband literally points back to those instructor moments all the time, still to this day.
And Phoenix was one of the best that I've seen at that, where they said, "Okay, faculty member, you share that, you get your fingerprints on this course, so that the students have that real world experience." John Sperling was a genius at recognizing not only the needs of the adult learner, but the needs of the faculty member and the skill sets of the faculty member, and hiring in that adjunct that has that field experience, because it is so powerful. It is so powerful.
Absolutely. And I feel like right now, though, we're in a, and maybe you disagree, I feel like we're in a little bit of a weird situation with adjunct faculty where we're, we're overloading our students with busy work, but the same way who has to grade that busy work is the faculty, right? So we're burdening both of them with like what? Meaningless
Right.
to meet credit hour?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's going to continue on as a discussion point. The clock hour model. I am not I'm not a Carnegie credit hour guy. We do it. We build it
Yep.
in. I just was talking with the president of a college today, and saying, okay, we can design this course with this particular clock hour, so we're covered. Um, but I don't like it because it doesn't equal learning.
Yep.
But once we get to the competency type models where we can say, okay, we've proven they've got that learning, they understand it, how to use it. But you have to have that as part of the discussion until we find a better, more widely pervasive model that really takes over.
Absolutely. Now you, um, last we talked, are pretty passionate about this like idea of micro learning, right? Like how does we've we've spent some time, I guess, kind of bashing the state of higher ed, maybe. Um, let's talk about some new ideas. And micro learning is one of those ways in which you are passionate. Let's talk about that a little bit. What I think were you calling it micro learning or micro courses?
Micro
Both.
learning in micro courses, yeah, yeah.
And what do you mean by that?
There's also all the little different pieces about it. Um, you know, we as a team are looking at, how do we get the learning out to the individual student in the best way possible. And I've certainly seen where students are held back by a very traditionally minded model, that it really, it's so lockstep, it's so rigid that it doesn't account for personal schedules. And going back to John Sperling, he recognized that and built Phoenix, and built their 5 and 6 and 8 week models that helped students be able to accomplish that. We're taking it now to even smaller, thus the micro, pieces to help them work around schedules. Um, I I know my own attention span has diminished.
Yep.
Our society has been driven into this need for short spurts of heightened focus, and micro courses accomplish that. um, I joke about it, but there's certain television series I probably would like to watch, but I just don't have the time. There's certain movies that I look at and go, that looks interesting. I don't have the focus to watch that movie right now. And that's kind of across the board in anything we're doing. Like, I don't have the time to go to the gym every day and spend 2 hours getting built, getting a nice
Yeah.
set of muscles. I just don't have the time. And so you look at learning, then I need to learn this, but I don't have time to go back to the traditional school, spend 2 nights a week or whatever it is, or especially go Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, for for classes. I don't have that time. And so now we need to go. I also need to get upskilled. My job's changing. AI is making it change. Oh, by the way, there's a lot of tumult in the market. I mean, we in the U.S. here, we've been watching as the federal government does a bunch of revamping,
Yep.
and that's only going to change. And for all those people that have been displaced already, they're looking for the next thing too. And so, how do we find a way to prepare people for the next thing and make it manageable? Well, micro learning does that in a lot of things, and it is more competency based, because we're putting it in chunks. We're saying, okay, you got that? Make sure, show us. And that's what that micro course model design does. It helps you do it in bite size, and there's a lot of different ways that you can make it. The 5-week course is an accelerated model, but when you need to break it down further, how do you break it down? Well, you could do 1-week courses, or you could do 20-minute topics.
Yep.
Okay, all you're going to do today or this morning is watch this 5-minute thing, interact with it, talk about it, and move on. And you've shown that you understand it, you've got that back and forth, and have that system that is telling you, yep, you understand, you've got the gist of the concepts there. And that helps a learner to go, I've accomplished that, I can move on from that. And that's what the micro course model does for you. And there's, I've seen a number of different models where it's like someone's getting a text from someplace, and that's their micro course lesson for the day. Here's a link to a little bit of a video. It's got a discussion course, a question back and forth on text, or it's you log into a system. However you do it, it's got different models of making that happen.
Absolutely. And I think, I talk about Duolingo a lot. We're a big Duolingo family. And you get a reminder every day, don't forget to do your lesson, right? And it takes just a couple minutes for you to log in, and you get to choose what you want to do. Do you want to
Yeah.
talk to Lily? Do you want to do a full lesson? Do you want to review the things that you've been missing, right? You have kind of a choose your own
Yeah.
adventure. How am I going to spend my time in the Duolingo app to really keep my streak going? I
Yeah.
think there's a lot that we can really learn from Duolingo. Um, but when we talk about micro credentials, I think one thing that is really hard to wrap your brain around for higher ed is if a school is, let's say, on a 15-week semester, right? Let's think about our traditional campuses. I'm enrolled in a school, 15 weeks is our semester. How can they make micro credentials become a reality and not just a space in which they live hypothetically for years and years and years and years? What might that look like for a traditional school?
Well, I think that one, they're going to have to be willing to accept change to the model. That happened with the accelerated model and online. Um, it took a long time for them to get comfortable with it. In fact, they used to counsel colleges as they were implementing online programs to make sure their courses did not look like they were online courses. I have one client that used to have all of their course numbers that were online have an O in front of it. Well, at that time, that was dangerous because there were some people that were very biased against it, and they wouldn't accept that. So that mind shift has happened. Facebook helped. When grandmothers got on Facebook and were able to communicate with their grandchildren, it kind of got built in. It kind of got baked in that, oh, we can have relationship, we can have community online. And then COVID happened, and that really exasperated it. Like, we are going to have to go online quick in order to have school for the rest of the year. It wasn't always great, but it really proved to them, yeah, we can do online education. A similar thing needs to happen. I don't know if it will happen, but it needs to happen where people go, yes, micro courses can work. And instead of insisting that we're going to make sure that we document every minute of 135 clock hours for a 3 semester hour course, we need to go more towards the competency model. Now, Western Governors has done, yeoman's work on getting that model out into the public.
Yep.
And others are following suit. I know one of the accreditors that we're working on, they've got it, listed out, and we're looking at it for our clients to say, okay, how can we help them develop this model? And it really helps when you start having people have the conversation of, yeah, this is real, this, and show them, yeah, I learned this skill. I was looking at a company the other day where They do technical training, and it's all that micro course type of a model where you're getting that. And some of the comments from the users were like, I'm taking this class in college, and I jumped over and took this course to help me understand what I'm trying to take in college.
Mm.
That's showing validity of the concept, and that part of it is very important. So that the mind shift to go to a micro course learning and go, yeah, it's real, has value, and really leads to the skill sets is important. We've got to help people to make that mind shift. I don't know what it will take to do that exactly, because there's a lot of people that still don't really know what micro courses are. They haven't heard the discussion, they haven't heard the value. I think the timing piece will, getting up to speed quickly helps people. To some extent, the courses that you see on Instagram, etc., where you can buy it for $30 help because people are doing it, and in some cases they're getting some skill sets. I will say that I am guilty of doing that that purchase. What do they call it? Impulse buy
Mm.
of those courses. Like, hey, that sounds interesting. I'd like to learn a bit more. Click the button, buy the course. I had to make myself stop doing that because there's so many out there and there's so many things to learn, and I don't always get to them. And so that part of it is making sure you don't overbuy. But those courses certainly help to establish the field. And colleges need to recognize they could be in that game, and go, I can help my students, and recognize this is covering the same concepts that I want for them to know. And oh, that information went out of sync. It's no longer active. We'll throw it out and let's just add another piece in there. And that's the other beauty of it, is having this smorgasbord of courses that they can kind of take in their own pace. And when it needs to be updated, you have to update a full course. You're just updating this little piece. That's a really nice piece for a college, and that they can go direct to students, at a client. A company could come to a college and say, "I need my team to know this topic, this topic, this topic, and this topic," and not have to go through a full degree program. Okay, no problem. We'll have that set up for you. Give me the names of your students. We'll get them enrolled, and they'll be set to go. That's the advantage of the micro course for the college, I think.
Absolutely. And I think it solves a lot of problems. You just kind of hit on, like, how do we keep 15-week courses up to date when we know that they take a really long time to develop? But you're right, if we have a 1 or 2 week class and it needs to get updated, that's much faster. That can happen overnight or in a couple of days versus this long development cycle. I also think I have 2 kids, so we went and saw Minecraft this weekend. That was a world of its own. I have to paint this picture of this Minecraft opening weekend. Kids down to like 3, all the way to college students. Every seat was packed, like wild. I don't know the last time I saw a movie theater completely packed. We were in IMAX too, so hundreds of seats packed. All ages. The entire movie, people were clapping and cheering. I had no idea what was going on. I don't know Minecraft at all. I had no idea, but everyone succinctly was clapping, cheering at different parts of the movie. And at the very end, it does wrap up really nicely because it basically talks about how you're living in this video game world because you love to create, but the real world, there's opportunities to create there too. And I just kind of had this aha moment of like, these are our students, right? Like, this is today's learner. They love creating and being involved in the world in which they're creating. And if we hand them a degree plan and say go, it means nothing. But if we hand them, hey, you need 8 classes and 8 micro courses in marketing, which ones look awesome to you? Social media, it's a 2 week class. Yeah, let's do it. What else looks cool? What else do you think would help in your future career, right? Like, that brings them into the process of creating their own world versus us dictating what they're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely right. And the Minecraft, and I my son was into it for a while. I it made me feel claustrophobic just knowing that I've just gone underground and I'm just digging through here. But I've seen courses designed using Minecraft. Like there was micro course type courses using Minecraft, and it's amazing what you can do with that and the gamification of learning aspect of it. But yeah, the understanding of the culture and how they're using that is just incredible. I have always felt techie. I was the techie guy in the room in most of the places, and I'm feeling less and less so with all the neat little innovations
Yes.
that are coming out.
Yep.
Just because there's just so much of it, and I can't keep up.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. I always felt like I had an edge. I feel I attribute a lot of my HTML skills to MySpace. You know, if you could if you could code a little bit, you could
Yeah,
move past the top 8 and into a top 16, and you could add some
yeah,
music and um but you're right. I feel less and less every day. And the other day my 5-year-old showed me how to get out of an app, and I was like mortified that my 5-year-old knew something on the phone that I didn't
yep.
know. Um, but that's the generation, right? And I feel like we're resisting. I feel like we're kind of in this state of like resistance of the student has changed and we don't want to embrace it. We want to like conform them to our old model. And I'm in faculty groups where they're talking about this, right? They're like, man, these students today are so hard and they don't want to do their work and they want to use AI and they want to cheat. And, they're just, how do we like as an industry, this feels like a big hurdle or and across I mean maybe it's a hurdle, maybe it's a crossroad, but how as an industry do we help move our institution past what used to be and into like this is the future? How do institutions even do that?
Well, I I would say part of it is we need to recognize that when we don't allow for those changes, we kind of come across as the "get off my lawn"
Yeah.
type of a personality, and I know at one of the institutions we designed a policy that dealt. It was the academic dishonesty policy because that's where it made most sense. At first, we said when AI first came out, we're like, you can't use AI to design your papers unless you have specific permission.
Mm.
And that was at a point where we had heard about it as faculty members. We were doing research on it, that sort of thing. But the students, we weren't seeing a ton of interaction. And then all of a sudden, of course, everyone was using it and they were getting caught, and we had systems in place to catch them at that sort of thing. Now we have, and it's for one of the colleges I work with, it's going before the board this 2 weeks, where the policy is okay, you can use AI. We really would like for you to write the paper first. We want you to develop it on your own. Then you can copy it into AI. If you do AI research on AI, like if you're doing a review of AI, say, AI, show me all information on, basket weaving or whatever. You have to list the link to where that information is stored on ChatGPT or whatever. And so you use it as a reference. The big thing that we're trying to do now is to show them how to ethically use it, how it is something that every field is going to have to grapple with. It's not just a, one or two fields are going to be affected. No, everything is going to be affected. Um, and so we want them to learn how to use it. We don't want them to go out without a good understanding of this is good practice. I mean, if you're going to have the conversation with someone about a topic, it's probably a good idea to start with um, like doing some research. And a good way to research is an AI. They'll pull that information together. Um, but it's not something that we want them to stop thinking about. And that's the point that we have to stress is like, it's a tool like anything else. Um, a calculator was a tool. When I was a kid, I was able to use a calculator starting in Algebra 2. Yeah, I think that's right. I think before that, I wasn't permitted to use a calculator. Everything had to be done by hand.
Hmm.
And that was right towards the end of that. I mean, I still have that calculator. I mean, it's I use it regularly, but I only use it for that, type of things. Now, right when I was finishing up in high school, the graphing calculators were starting to come
Mm,
out, and that the danger, of course, was that those students could store stuff in them and wouldn't have to remember formulas or whatever. So that was the danger of it. And then the point became like, okay, so you've got the thing in there. Do you know how to use it? And that's the piece that we want students to be able to do is understand this is just a tool. How do you still think on your own? How do you still create and develop and monitor? Because of course, um, you know, AIs daydream and they make stuff up, and that's the part that they need to be smart enough to figure out. This isn't a just get out of jail free. You don't have to do any real work. No, you have to really know what makes sense and what's fake, and check your resources and that sort of thing, to do that. And if as we help our students converse, for lack of a better word, using AI and operate using AI effectively, that's where we start setting that precedent of, look, it's not just your abilities, it's your abilities with the tools around you, and helping not only the field get better because they're doing it the right way, but helping those students succeed better in the field.
yeah, and I think if we can get there, we'll be in a good place. I
Mm-hmm.
think though my concern is about how we get there and how much resistance there is, right, around students using AI at all, right?
Yeah,
There's so many policies that just say no. And then on the other side, you have faculty who are creating announcements that are very clearly with AI, right? And it feels like a contradiction, right? My instructor can use AI and I can see it in their announcements, except for I'm not allowed to. There's so much resistance. And I think this goes back to like, what is the role of the faculty, right? Like the faculty are holding on to traditional course models where they are the content experts. And so a lot of the ideas that we're talking about feels like it could, if I'm a traditional tenured faculty, AI is a threat to my job. Micro learning is potentially a threat to my job, right? All of these are threats. And I used to be a behavioral therapist, and I would always say there's like an extinction point when we're working through a behavior, right? A kid, if we're working on a behavior, they're going to act even worse. It has to get worse before it gets better.
yeah,
And because a kid who knows that their world is turning upside down is trying every last resort to keep control of their world, right? And then at some point the bubble pops
yeah,
and that behavior is gone. But the kid goes down fighting and it's really hard on the parents, for that time. And it feels like kind of that moment where there's a lot of kicking and screaming because we're trying to keep control of this world. And I just don't like I wish I could have a crystal ball and say like, is this going to pop and suddenly everyone is going to be like, okay, we're here. Now we realize we need to move into the future. Um, and how long, or are we just going to keep living in this state until our field is basically gone?
yeah. Well, and I think there's the concern for jobs. I think is going to be felt across the board with AI and other technologies. It's not it's not as if anyone's going to be unscathed by that. For faculty in particular, I look back to my experience as a student, and there's a few faculty members that I just cherish because they were so impactful, they
Yep.
were so caring. I call one my educational mom. My she was my dissertation chair, and that relationship um, wasn't necessarily about the teaching, though I remember the things that she taught, but it was her ability to impact, her ability to connect with me. And we're polar opposites on a number of items. but her ability to impact me and affect me. It taught me how to be a teacher. It taught me how to be a thinker and a researcher. Um, and I think faculty, not all the faculty, but I think some of the faculty at least will get that part of it and go, okay, if I have the minuscule junk grading taken off my plate, and instead of having to produce all of the commentation or the commentary on their papers, I can just look it over and add a key point, something that really stands out, and and save that time. And then instead of having to spend hours preparing my lectures and doing all these things, I can go, okay, I want to take my students on the journey of this field and show them the how neat the field is and how innovative you can be in the field. If they're able to do that side of thing instead of the slogging of grading, I think that might be appealing to a lot of them. Some of it, they're not going to be, it's not going to be appealing. Was having a conversation on LinkedIn about someone posted about faculty that have tenure um, not getting better raises each year.
Mm.
And I've always been it from an administrative side of the model of like tenure promotes laziness. I mean, that's an oversimplification, of course, but
Right.
it has that tendency. But if I'm able to find that faculty member who's just alive for the students and be able to put that in there, I think they would be willing to make that adjustment of, okay, AI is going to do that for them. I'm going to have to double check. I'm going to have to make sure it looks good. I'm going to have to make sure it's giving it the right information. But once it becomes a strong enough model and we're comfortable with the results, and we know it's not daydreaming, we know it's not giving a false positive type of thing. Once we have that side of it taken care of, then we get to do the fun stuff that's left. And I think that's the selling point for faculty. And they recognize my job will shift a little bit, but it's going to be about creating this environment of excitement for a field, that this environment of helping to light that spark for the student. And I think that will be the meaningful part. I know for the faculty at one of my institutions that I'm leading, I I hear their excitement about the relational side and caring well for the student. I heard that before we heard anything else
Mm.
about the teaching, about the curriculum, about the classes. They wanted that part of it to be first and foremost when they were dealing with the students. And that's the selling point. If you're able to get them past all the other stuff, then I think you get to that part much, much more effectively.
Absolutely, because that is the heart of it. But you're right. We being faculty, get so bogged down with all the other administrative, check boxes that you have to check off with your course that you've completely lost touch in today's world with why you went into teaching, right? Because
Yeah.
you have all these other things to deal with. Um, I was I have was just talking to someone and he said, we have a very lean faculty governance process because that's not what we need our faculty doing. We need our faculty with our students, talking to them, being content experts, right? We don't need our faculty dealing with faculty governance meetings. Like that's just one more thing.
Yeah.
Where I'm going with this is I feel like we've talked about a lot of kind of legacy items that are maybe sacred to higher ed, right? Academic freedom, governance processes, credit hour, traditional models. Like we've talked about a lot of those things that when you think about higher ed, they're like core pillars.
Yeah.
In your opinion, which one, and this is going to be a new question that I start asking my guests. I'm just decided just now. What legacy item needs to go? Like what if you're like this legacy item that higher ed holds on to is holding us back, what is that item? What needs to go?
Well, I think this can be very unpopular. I'm not a fan of shared governance,
Mm,
and here's why.
preach.
It does bog faculty down. They get involved in discussions that take them out of the classroom. And if we're hiring the right people to lead, uh, they're doing that work. So let them lead. Not to say that faculty don't have a voice and shouldn't have a voice, but when you tie up a leader because they don't have a full vote of confidence from a faculty group, that keeps the decision, the ability to innovate at their level from moving forward. And so the shared governance model, we hear about it everywhere. Oh, how is shared governance implemented at your institution? Um, I want to have the ability to bring them into the conversation, listen to what they have to say, but not be tied up by someone who has a wild hair that day, figuratively speaking. I want someone who has the innovation capability at the top leader level to go and take on the market with the team behind them, each of them doing their spots. Because I retired from teaching in 2012. By that point, I had had 9,000 plus students. Every once in a while, I will pick up another class to help out a group, but it's not my thing anymore. I've stepped out of that. I do administrative work. I do oversight. I do the design and the innovation pieces along with a team at a college. My role is not in the classroom anymore. Conversely, when I was in the classroom, I didn't have the time. I mean, I don't have the time to go do all that stuff. I couldn't be on, 20 committees. It just didn't work because I had so much else to worry about. And so when you have a faculty member who is released to the classroom, like, go lead that area. That's your space. Go make it awesome. And they have that freedom to do that and build in the things that is going to make the student come alive. Um, and instead of worrying about, and I know people who are big on the shared governance piece, that they'll say it's not that they are free to do this, they're kept from doing that. They're going to say that. I get that.
Yep.
But when each group is free to do their stuff and not get in everyone else's business, we get the opportunity to really excel. I just wrote a post the other day about delegation. I was in a meeting recently with a team that I had delegated some stuff to, and they were kind of reporting back on it. And I thought of like 20 different ways I'd have done it differently. And it was everything I could do to not share that information. If it failed, I might have to come in and do that. But the bigger part is, how do I let the team succeed in what they're supposed to be doing and be great at what they're doing? Supporting them where I can, not forcing them down the path that I want them to go down. And that's what we should be looking at. Is I want a team of people that are just stinking awesome at everything that they are set to do, and have the resources to do what they're supposed to do, and not be in each other's business. Because we can do that too. We can be a busybody about other people's role and try to second guess them, and that creates a really dangerous culture for you as in an institution when everyone's nitpicking at the other person, like they're the expert and God's gift to the world in that, and when it comes down to it, they don't know what they're talking about. I'm not a CFO type. I have some opinions on things, but at the end of the day, I would never take that job because I just don't know what I'm doing.
Yep.
And that's the piece that we need to do, is find the right people and then let people be free to do what they're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely. And to the other side, I mean, you own your company. Imagine if you had to get your entire team's approval for
Yeah.
everything you did, right? It's like you own the company, you lead the company, and that's what you should be doing. You have the oversight, you're looking at the landscape, you know the regulations that are coming down. And deans and program directors and provosts, right? Like same thing as a CEO. They have all the data coming down. Most faculty don't have the full picture.
Yeah.
Not mostly because they just can't, right? There's information that they're not privy to, and that's why decisions are being made. And I can't even imagine having to get an entire group of people to agree on every single decision when they don't have the full picture in front of them. It's like, let the deans and the program directors lead, let the faculty teach, and just like you said, trust that both groups will do both of their jobs well, and that the leader is going to consider the needs of the faculty and the needs of the students. But there's a lot of other things that they're taking into consideration that the faculty don't have privy
That's
to. And how many initiatives, I know that I can count on more than 20 hands, how many initiatives have died because they just can't get through the governance process?
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
good initiatives.
That's right. And at one of the institutions I work with, we had to make a rapid decision to redesign everything. And I came in there to help them do that. And so we changed over academic affairs, used to involve the whole faculty, and I said, don't do that, because we need to get rid of that. Now they're a very small institution, so we were able to do some changes to the structure. We did away with department chairs because you have five full-time faculty, and everyone was a department chair. Well, who else is reporting? Like, there's not a department. There's students in that area, but we don't have other faculty for them to manage. It's just them in the department. So we did away with that. We combined two different academic affairs committees, and we made it very specific, very key roles within the institution that were involved in that. And then we started bringing the faculty into a regular faculty meeting to have discussions. But at the end of the day, I might not listen to them. And that was just the way it was. There was some resistance at first when that happened. But once they understood that I was really listening, I was really paying attention, and I did value their opinion, and that I understood that they understood that there was some other things that they might not be hearing, they were much better off. They didn't have to worry about going through that. And when we simplified other systems for them, and really let them focus on the thing that they were there to do, much easier to operate. And yeah, I can't imagine trying to run my company without having to get everyone on the same page. Does that mean that I'm going to do it perfectly? No, it doesn't. And I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to make wrong decisions. But here's the thing about it. When I make a wrong decision, guess what? I can make another one right after that and fix it.
Yep.
Because I didn't have to go through the chain of command, quote unquote, to get that approval. And I tell the team, one of the philosophies that we have in our teams is, I want you to own your own work. I want you to be the champion of what you do. And if you make a wrong decision that really has a bad effect, we'll discuss it. But like, you know what you're doing. I'm not going to try to second guess everything you're doing. And that's an important thing that we need in our colleges. Like, yeah, we're going to have to take care of the compliance piece, and that's a whole other conversation, the compliance industrial complex. But there's a lot of things that don't get affected by that, and a lot of them happen in the classroom. So it's an important piece that we take into consideration, and we just let people be who they're supposed to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Josh, we are out of time. I think we could have, I just looked at the clock and was like, oh, we've been talking a long time. I think we could both talk about this probably
Yes, we could.
forever. But I think these conversations are really important to have, because if we're just all accepting the way that it is, then
Yeah,
our industry is going to die.
that's right.
So I think it's good that we have conversations like this to challenge the status quo and point to different ways, which microlearning is one way, just one of the ways in which we can start to make things better or different.
Yep.
But thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you so much for being here. I am going to include your LinkedIn link in my description. So if someone is listening and they want to connect with Josh, find his LinkedIn and I know that Josh would love to connect with you and chat. But thank you so much for being here, Josh.
Thanks for having me, Nicole. It was great to talk.
Awesome. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.